So, the PSN apocalypse is upon us. Sony's going to be shutting down the online stores for the PS3, PSP, and PS Vita. So that means that all those games that you were like, yeah, I'll get to that one day, maybe it kind of looks alright or interesting. One of these days, I'll get around to playing it. Well, those days are here. Those days are now. So it's time to start going through a bunch of games that you thought were like, maybe. Because this might be your last opportunity to ever get your hands on them. And so I just played Blackrock Shooter the game for that very reason. This is a game I've always kind of had my eye sort of on because I'm a big fan of Blackrock Shooter, the thing, whatever it is. I like the original art and character design by the original creator, Huke. I'm a fan of the anime. I like the song. There's a whole bunch of Blackrock Shooter shit. There's a manga. Nobody cares about Blackrock Shooter, by the way. It's just me. I'm like the only person that gives a fuck about this series, quote unquote. And I've known about this game for a long time, but I've never really given it a go because, like, quite frankly, it's a JRPG, and I am not really into these kinds of games typically. Very occasionally I'll play a JRPG, but generally they're not my kind of thing. I've tried many in my day, and I've just really not gotten on with them the vast majority of the time. But being Blackrock Shooter, this game did always intrigue me a little bit more than other games, just because I'm a fan. So I thought, alright, fine. I'll get this frickin' shitty PSP JRPG, and I'll give it a go. And I actually managed to finish it. To my surprise, I kinda liked it. I liked it quite a bit, I would say. I wouldn't say I loved it. I don't think it's like a holy shit, amazing game, you gotta play this. But it's not bad. It's alright. I liked it. One of the things about it that appealed to me a little bit more than your typical JRPG is that it doesn't use turn-based combat. Because turn-based combat to me is just so uninteresting most of the time. Very rare that I actually can get engaged with a turn-based combat system in like any game. I don't play like tactical games or strategy games or anything like that really. Like, come on man. I need action. I need coolness. And this game offers a little bit of action and coolness because the combat is played in real time. The way it works is basically you have that meter at the bottom right-hand corner that's like your heat, and as you take actions, that heat fills up, and if it fills up too much, then you're not going to be able to do anything. And for actions, you simply have shoot, block, and dodge. Blocking will stop you from taking the full damage of enemy attacks, but if you can dodge them with correct timing, then you'll avoid the damage completely. And you can't move during the combat. This is on the PSP, so you only have one analog stick, and they use that for aiming the reticle for shooting around. So the dodging just alternates you between two different positions on the battle. And it works well enough. So you alternate between those three actions, making sure to take some breaks to let your heat go back down, so that way it doesn't overheat. And also, as your heat fills up, then your gun starts to get a little bit weaker once you hit like 40% and it turns yellow, and then even worse when you're up higher and it gets red. So you want to be at generally low heat whenever you can. It's also worth mentioning that you can't cancel shooting your gun into blocking or dodging, so you do need to be a little bit careful and think a bit. You can't just mindlessly be shooting all the time, because if an enemy starts an attack while you're shooting, unless it's a really slow attack, you're probably not going to be able to avoid it, so you're going to take a bunch of damage. So you got to be careful and look for your openings of when it's safe to shoot. And that's the kind of thing I can get behind. And then on top of that, you have 4 different ability slots that you can put in that work on cooldowns, and they don't affect your heat at all, so you can use them while you're trying to cool down and let your heat recover. And they just do big damage to enemies or give you buffs and stuff like that, and each ability has its own cooldown of however many seconds, so you want to be cycling those as often as you can while also dodging attacks and managing your heat and stuff like that. And enemies will come in close for melee attacks, and they'll have ranged attacks and attacks that can track your lane change if you try to dodge, or they won't if you try to dodge early or late and stuff like that. And it's a relatively simple combat system, but it's fun enough. I was engaged by it, and I enjoyed it enough to play through the game to the end, which is definitely not something I can say for 99% of JRPGs I've tried playing in my day. Outside of the combat, there's not a whole lot in terms of gameplay. You basically just walk around in these levels, quote-unquote, but the levels are just kind of like empty areas that you just walk around in. There's absolutely nothing going on in terms of movement or platforming or anything like that, or any kind of traversal whatsoever, really. There's the occasional, like, context. Press the X button to get BRS to jump from one place to another, and that's about it. Other than that, it's just walking around, opening chests, and running into enemy encounters. And that kind of thing is pretty common for PSP-style RPGs, to my understanding. They're typically like that, and a lot of RPGs are really like that, honestly. At least in my experience. There's rarely a whole lot going on in the, like, exploration outside of combat gameplay, unless it's like one of those really big, like, AAA JRPGs. But typically smaller games like this, yeah, it's just like levels exist just to be areas for you to walk through. Which is a little bit boring, but I'm fine with it. It's good enough. Whatever. You run into combat encounters and cutscenes frequently enough where it's not usually a problem. One thing, though, that I think was probably a pretty big factor in me actually playing this game to the end and enjoying it, when I typically don't with JRPGs, is that this game does not waste your fucking time. It doesn't have any random battles. All the enemies are out in the field, and you can run into them if you want to fight them, or you can avoid them if you don't want to fight them. When you get into a battle, there's no unnecessarily long, flashy, get into a fight animation. It just fades in, and you can immediately control BRS. The attack animations are fast and snappy. The special move animations are a little longer than I would like, but it's not too bad. You can skip all the cutscenes if you want to when you're, like, dying and replaying back through an area. There's no, like, end of battle, look at me, I won, with the jingle as you look at your XP. Just a little menu comes up and you can mash through it really quickly, and then you just fade back into exploring. That's one of the biggest problems I have with JRPGs. Everything just takes so frickin' long. I've already figured out how to win the enemy encounter the moment it started, but I have to go through all these slow-ass animations, I have to go through menus, and it's just like, I can think the game faster than I can play it. Whereas here, this game, it goes by fast, and I like that. The only things that get a lot of the flair are like mini-bosses or the main boss fights at the end of areas, and that's fine. Also, because of the action elements of this game, it means it's totally possible to win fights without taking a single hit. So you never have to grind your XP to level up to become strong enough to beat the boss of the area or whatever. You can use your skill to get good to beat the boss, so there's no grinding at any point in this game that I had to do. There's some annoying side quests that are very tedious, but you could just not do them, quite frankly. That's what I did. And, I guess the only thing left to talk about is the story, and it's okay. It's not amazing, it's not incredible. I would not say you have to see the story of this game, but I thought it was pretty alright for a Black Rock shooter game story. It's basically a post-apocalypse, and there's the last surviving humans, and BRS is like an enhanced super soldier clone thing, and you fight to defeat an alien army that has invaded Earth. And it goes in a couple of different directions, interesting revelations about who BRS is or was or is supposed to be or whatever, and her character goes through a bit of a change, because as, like, an artificially made person, she, like, doesn't understand humanity and emotions and shit like that, and she eventually learns and discovers herself and builds connections and, you know, that whole kind of thing. And honestly, that's a lot more than I was expecting for this game, so I was pleasantly surprised. It's a fine story. One thing about it that's kind of weird, though, is that, like, when I say the last surviving humans, I mean there is literally 10 people left. And that is a pretty fucking grim situation. But the soldiers, when they're talking, are, like, joking around, and they're like, when this is all over, you still owe me that drink, and shit like that. And I'm like, There's 10 fucking humans left on a planet invaded by aliens. Like, you're fucked. The human race is fucked. I don't know how these people are so optimistic and cheery in this situation, but I guess they didn't want the game to be too grim and dark. They wanted a little bit of lightheartedness in there for BRS to, like, connect with these characters and befriend them and stuff, I guess. And it's not too jarring, but it's a bit weird. That's about all I have to say about Black Rock Shooter the game, I guess. I know nobody cares about it, but I enjoyed it. There you go. One more JRPG to add to the list of JRPGs that I actually enjoy, and I'm pretty sure that almost doubled the size of that list.